Good afternoon, adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Today, I wish to speak to you about how furthering women's rights is fundamental for development. And so the story begins. Once upon a time, the world was divided, rife with inequality. In today's society, it's hard to even imagine the mistreatment that once existed, now that our world flourishes with equitability. It's difficult to remember the many challenges that women once faced, such as the time in history when women in Saudi Arabia were forbidden to drive, creating a massive dilemma of how to get 367,000 girls to school on buses that could only be driven by men. We fail to remember the many women who received acid thrown in their faces due to not complying with a rule which stated women in Kashmir must wear a burqa. We often forget that not long ago, in countries such as Iraq, Libya, Jordan, Morocco, Oman, and Yemen, married women required their husband's permission in order to travel abroad. They were essentially prisoners of their own country. We remember that once upon a time, 40% of young women in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa were married by their 18th birthday, and how Pakistani women were expected to accept arranged marriages. Failure to do so could often lead to honor killings. What would you say if I told you that this was not in fact a tale of old, but rather the harsh reality of our so-called modern world? Gender equality, or lack thereof, is an ongoing issue. We cannot allow ourselves to become complacent. We need to promote the political participation and economic empowerment of women. Promoting women's rights is not only a question of morality, but also a question of economic development. As Malala Yousafzai states, we cannot succeed when half of us are held back. Gender equality is essential for growth and poverty reduction. It is fast emerging that the empowerment of women is a critical factor in the eradication of poverty. Yet, the mainstream approach to poverty analysis remains gender blind. Providing women and young girls with an education helps break the cycle of poverty. About 2/3 of the world's illiterate adults are women. Lack of an education severely restricts a woman's access to information and opportunity. Where there is access to quality education rooted in human rights, it creates a ripple effect of opportunity that influences generations to come. Education is both an intrinsic right and a lever to reach other development objectives. By improving economic opportunities for women, we can change the economic value of females within the home and society. Microfinancing is a fairly new concept which offers financial inclusion for women in developing countries. Increasing women's access to financial services through microfinance is key to promoting their socio-economic status and independence. When given the opportunity, women are extremely entrepreneurial in nature and have an inherent awareness that education is a means of escaping poverty. Therefore, often the profits generated from these micro-enterprises are used to fund the education of their children, especially the girls. The importance of education cannot be emphasized enough. Apart from the obvious improvements in literacy and numeracy, there are other far-reaching effects which have a positive impact on the lives of young women and their families. Health education promotes better nutrition in the home, which in turn decreases the mortality rate. Safe sex education in primary schools ensures girls are less likely to contract sexually transmitted diseases such as HIV and AIDS. As suggested by the United Nations Population Fund, in underdeveloped countries, 1 in every 3 girls is married by their 18th birthday. In a region where a girl receives 7 or more years of education, the wedding date is postponed by 4 years, thus giving the girl's body time to mature so they can safely give birth to thriving babies. Women are underrepresented as voters and restricted from political involvement across the globe. Education is really the only means of bridging this gap. At present, females have just fewer than 23% in political representation across the globe. Although this is up by almost 100% in the last 20 years, it is still a shocking statistic, considering females make up 50% of the Earth's population. Women bring different views, talents, and perspectives to politics. Therefore, it is imperative that women are involved in politics at all levels. Women parliamentarians are the most ardent supporters of women and have been responsible for putting women's concerns and issues on the parliamentary agenda. While some political parties have implemented reforms to make them more gender sensitive, in many ways, gender equality in parliaments remains an ideal, not yet a reality. Attaining equality between women and men and eliminating all forms of discrimination is something we must strive to achieve. As the UN slogan says, women's rights are human rights. Stamping out inequality of any form, wherever it rears its ugly head, is the duty and responsibility of all of us who inhabit this earth, both men and women. So, let us write the final chapter in this grim fairy tale. Let us finally be able to say those magic words. The end.